Thank you for joining me today as I go over this video presentation for business ethics. I will identify the ethical dilemma from my personal experience, then I will explain the ethical problem and relevant principles. Then I'll apply the ethical framework to analyze the issue. Then I will discuss how the frameworks and principles guide my response and conclusion. So I'll go over the introduction to the ethical dilemma in the emergency room, which would be the University of Utah Health Main Hospital. I'll go over a couple things, which would be the context and the ethical dilemma. The context is highlighting the real-life scenario, the unauthorized patient chart access in the ER, revealing tensions between maintaining confidentiality and managing professional obligations. This will lead into the ethical dilemma, which will be focusing on the conflict between safeguarding patient confidentiality and the colleague's privacy after unauthorized chart access, outlining legal, ethical, professional implications. So the scenario starts here is during one of my shifts at HMHI, which would be Huntsman Mental Health. I received an urgent call from emergency department regarding a potential breach in patient confidentiality, specifically reporting the instance of unauthorized access to a patient medical records by individual patient sharing the last name of the person that's accessing the chart, which would flag it. At the time, the patient was preparing to undergo a surgical procedure. The patient provided the MRN. I determined the individual who may access the records that may seem to align with one of the nurses there, but I did not mention that to the supervisor. This kind of introduced the complex professional and ethical consideration. In light of the sensitive scenario, I responded, "I'm not sure if that totally matches anyone here that name." I chose not to disclose any potential names just purely because I'm unsure. Adhering to strict confidentiality protocols and deferring to human resources department with the established policies. My response emphasized the human resource judgment on the appropriate actions to ensure full compliance with our guidelines, privacy, confidentiality, and staff conduct. So that leads to the ethical dilemma here is where try to frame the situation around the challenge of protecting the patient's confidentiality versus safeguarding the colleague's privacy. Ethical dilemma of the unauthorized access to the patient medical chart by the nurse primarily present a significant legal and liability concerns. Along with the ethical and privacy issues, legal repercussions, this action potentially violates the laws of HIPAA, exposes individual and healthcare institutions to fines and legal penalties for breaching patient confidentiality. The liability issues here is unauthorized access can lead to healthcare providers and the institution facing lawsuits for invasion of privacy and breach of trust. So prioritizing legal liability aspects, unauthorized chart access not only the breach ethical standards, but also exposes the healthcare professionals and institutions to significant legal financial risk, undermining prioritizing legal and liability aspects. Unauthorized chart access is not only a breach of ethical standards, but also exposes the healthcare professionals and institutions to significant legal financial risk, which undermining the trust and privacy that is essential to patient care. So I'll go over my personal standards and ethical decision making, which first would start off with accountability. In my experience, being accountable for decisions in others' privacy has been crucial. Taking responsibility for my actions, especially when they affect others' privacy and well-being, is fundamental to the ethical decision making. This promotes trust, respect, ensuring that I am aware of my duties and the consequences of my actions. Next is integrity. In the ethical dilemmas like unauthorized chart access in the ER, integrity serves as a moral compass. I believe in unwavering adherence to ethical standards, even when faced with some of the ambiguity and the pressures to act otherwise. Perseverance in challenging situations, upholding ethical standards requires perseverance. Despite the obstacles, I deeply am committed to making ethical decisions driven by my dedication to professional values to be consistent over time. Compassion. Compassion is essential to understand the impact of our decisions on patients, colleagues, and the stakeholders. It drives us to consider the broader implications of our actions, ensuring that decisions are made with sensitivity and respect and the dignity for all those who are involved. Next is honesty. Honesty is crucial for trust in professional relationships, particularly in healthcare. It promotes open communication, accountability, which are essential for addressing issues like unauthorized access to patient information. Impacts of the dilemma on stakeholders. Benefits to some. Protecting staff privacy is crucial for cultivating a trusting work environment. It ensures that their personal information is respected and safeguarded, fostering a sense of security and loyalty. This in turn can enhance morale and productivity as staff feel valued and protected by their employer. Harm to others. A breach of patient confidentiality can have severe consequences, including loss of trust, which is fundamental to the patient-giver relationship. Patients may feel violated and lose faith in the healthcare system, potentially deterring them from seeking care or being open about their health concerns, which can adversely affect their health outcomes. Right exercised versus denied. Balancing the nurse's right to privacy with the patient's right to confidentiality is delicate. Both parties have legitimate expectations for privacy to be respected. The nurse's personal information should be protected from unnecessary exposure, while the patient's medical details must remain confidential, accessible only for the purposes of providing care. Rights denied. If the situation is mishandled, both the nurse and the patient could have their rights denied. For the nurse, it might involve unjust exposure or disciplinary action without due process. For the patient, it means their right to confidentiality is not upheld, potentially leading to personal distress and broader implications for their privacy, trust, medical professionals. This moral dilemma involves a breach of patient confidentiality due to unauthorized access to medical records by an employee at the healthcare facility. This violates the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, which is known as HIPAA. This federal legislation mandates the protection of patient health information. By accessing the patient records without legitimate need, this employee violated the HIPAA privacy rules, which could lead to legal and professional consequences. The institutional policy breach Code of Conduct of Ethics. As a member of the University of Utah Health staff, I'm expected to adhere to these high standards, which this would incorporate protection of the patient information, which this employee violated. The economic and legal considerations. These will both lead into financial losses from decreased patient trust, the cost from legal actions from fines for HIPAA violations, and investments in security upgrades and training, which costs money and time. So the ethical duties and responsibilities is first, the ethical duties is to protect the patient confidentiality and ensure fair treatment of staff. The fair treatment of staff is I'll focus on my colleagues with respect, fairness, and justice. Creating and maintaining an equitable workplace is vital for team morale and effectiveness. The influence of personal values. My personal beliefs and experiences significantly shape how I perceive and execute these ethical duties. For instance, highly value autonomy, so I might emphasize the importance of patient consent and confidentiality. Similarly, if justice was a core value for me, I'm particularly committed to ensuring fair treatment for all members. In proposing a moral solution, this will propose a process in handling similar issues in the future that include privacy training and a fair, confidential investigation process. In this approach, consulting with HR to handle the situation as described aligns with a key aspect of the moral solution, ensuring that the actions are taken in accordance to institutional policies and legal requirements and ethical standards. This approach underscores the importance of procedural fairness and compliance with established guidelines. The role of HR, they provide a procedural integrity. HR departments are equipped to handle sensitive situations and provide counsel to legal policy compliance, relevant laws such as HIPAA, adherence to institutions' privacy policies. So consulting with HR is not a deviation from engaging in ethical solution, rather than it's an integral component of the ethical resolution process. It facilitates a structured, fair, and compliant response to ethical dilemmas, ensuring that the actions are taking place are consistent with the moral obligation of protecting the patient confidentiality, treating the staff fairly, upholding the values of the healthcare institution. Just to conclude our presentation and just to recap, with the application of the Hosmer model to the dilemma, highlighting the importance of integrating personal values and professional responsibilities to ensure ethical decision-making. In this presentation, we applied the Hosmer model to navigate ethical dilemmas involving unauthorized access to patient medical chart. This model guided us through structured examination of personal standards and the impacts of our decisions, ensuring our actions are in line with both ethical frameworks and personal values. We emphasized the importance of aligning personal values with professional responsibilities, ensuring our decisions are not only legally compliant, but ethically sound. The role of HR in facilitating fair and confidential process, underscoring procedural integrity, balanced stakeholder consideration. Our journey highlighted the critical balance between protecting patient confidentiality and ensure fair treatment of staff by integrating personal values with accountability, integrity, perseverance, compassion, and honesty with our professional duties. We underscore the foundational role of values play in our ethical decision-making. Moreover, we propose a moral solution that involves privacy training and fair confidential investigation process for future incidents. This solution not only addresses the immediate dilemma, also reinforces our commitment to ethical principles and the cultivation of trust and respectful healthcare environment. Just to conclude, the Hosmer model to me has proven to be invaluable in guiding me through the complex landscape of this ethical problem and finding a solution through thoughtful considerations through the laws and economic outcomes. Importantly, the ethical duties that we owe to our patients and colleagues.